All right, welcome to the lab where we look at business. And today we are hanging out with Jaidin McCann. Jaidin and I have done a lot of projects together, so should be fun. Jaidin, first question we kind of ask everybody. Three-part question. What is your job title? And then what do you actually do? And then how does that inform the firm or build value for the firm?
Yeah, so my official title is a technical recruiter. What I do is I'm in the aerospace industry. So any aerospace or military contract DoD companies come to my firm and they need mechanical engineers, software engineers, thermal propulsion engineers or analysts. We find and place them. And how it adds value to the firm is that we get a pretty big payout for each person that we place. Okay. So say you pay one of the contractors $50 an hour. You charge the client $100 an hour. So we're making $50 an hour for every hour that they work. Yeah. And then, we split that up. So $50 an hour times around 2080, it's going to be a big number for the year for your firm.
So is that is like 100%? Is that kind of a typical markup, or does it vary? Kind of depend on what the actual contractor negotiates with you?
Yeah, so it varies. It definitely varies. I just use that for simple numbers.
Yeah. Good.
I've worked at some agencies that mark it up 200%. I've worked at some that mark it up 60. It really depends. You want the contractors to be paid fairly. You don't want to short them. So it's whatever they want. And then the bill rate that the company gives you, whatever that separation can be.
Right. No, it totally makes sense. So does the actual contractor working at a firm, do they know what the bill rate is?
No.
Okay. That would seem like it'd be pretty important that they didn't know.
A little. Yeah. I definitely messed up one time though. I will say that.
Oh yes. This is good.
Well, so this guy, I asked him what he wanted to make and he said around 90. So I thought he meant an hour because we place people at that rate. And I was like, oh, that's pretty high. I don't know. It caps out at around 70 an hour. And he goes, oh, an hour. I make 90 a year.
Oh,
that's a big gap. And I was like, I should have clarified. I totally forgot and I messed up. I was upset with myself.
That's awesome.
So I ended up paying him $70 an hour when he was making probably around like 45.
Yeah, that's awesome. Way to go. Right on. So you go out and you get people. So kind of your firm and you particularly, your product is actually people. So you're going to get people, you bring them to a firm. And before we get into how you do that, let me ask this. So let's say you bring me on and the bill rate's $150 an hour. You pay me $75 an hour. What does the firm do with the remaining 75? I mean, obviously a lot of it's profit, but do you do things like benefits and you have overhead and stuff like that? So what do those go to?
Yeah, well, basically contractors can buy benefits through us. We also do perm placements. So then they're just specifically for the company, get a percentage. But for contracts, they can buy benefits through us. And if they want to, I'm nice and I ask them first and then tack on an extra like $5 an hour to their rate. So we pay for it. So
right.
But yeah, you can buy benefits. We have about a 5% overhead. And then we get commission paid specifically out of it. So
to the individual recruiter.
Yeah. And so in the AM who went and got the business, the account manager.
Right.
So they went and got the business and then they came to us with the placement. I placed the person, we split the commission. And so the company takes a huge chunk of it for them. And then we get certain percentages, which vary depending on company you work for.
Makes sense. So let's just play here for a minute. Make it simple numbers. So the bill rate's $100 an hour. You pay me $50 an hour. And you say, you can't say, if you want to buy benefits, it's like $5 an hour, the equivalent, something like that. So I can buy benefits if I want, or maybe you're nice and you raise the rate to 55. So there's $5. And then you have a 5% overhead rate. So there's a few bucks in there, out of everything. For the remainder of the contract, do you like literally get paid per hour that person works? Meaning the end of the week, you get kind of a cut of their paycheck or the cut of that bill rate, or, we lost you on video. Is that okay?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, there you go. You're back now. Or is it like, hey, we think this person, our data suggests this person worked there for a year. So here's 10 grand or 5 grand or whatever for placing that person.
Yeah, kind of. It's whatever the rate is. So, I mean, overhead and stuff aside from the, corporate point of view,
Right.
the recruiter still gets a certain percentage. Let's just keep it easy and say 10%.
Okay.
So you guys would split the GM, you make the spread that you guys make 50-50. And if we pay you 50 and we're getting 100, we get $50 in there per hour. We would times that by 2080 to get the year's worth.
Right. It's the 12-month contract. Sure.
Yeah. And then we split it 50-50 in our spread, how much we've individually earned for the company.
Yeah.
And then you for that 10% example, get 10% of that in commission automatically.
Okay.
So around 20% going to recruiters.
You'll get a 10%, of the annual rate. You'll get a 10% check for placing someone. And then is it every month? Like as long as they stay there, you get additional? Is that how that works? Or is it just a single time placement?
No, yeah. So for permanent roles, it's single time.
Okay.
For contract, we times it by 2080 to get the total estimate.
Yeah.
But it's paid out each week.
It is. Okay. So like if they quit after 2 weeks, you don't get paid for it.
I did just have that happen.
So like retention is a huge part of your paycheck.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's just go there. You're trying to balance of like, I want someone in this role who they're going to like, but I also need someone in this role and need to pay them where they'll actually stay. Otherwise you individually, like you lose money.
Yep.
All right. How do you balance that? What do you look for in retention?
What's funny is that for perm roles, you look for culture. The interview process is way longer. And for contractors, they kind of are a lifestyle contractor, move in here and there. Right. I love it when contractors like, oh, I don't know this skill, but I can learn it. And I'm like,
right.
No, they need someone to come in, get it done. Like right. No training involved.
Right.
And so you want to slingshot them a little bit and be like, hey, this is the guy, get in there, get it done. Yep. But you want to build that relationship with them first.
Right.
So usually I don't place people the first time I talk to them and the first job I submit them to. Right. It's usually like the third or the fourth one when you've developed that relationship, specifically what they do. I like to ask them, what are you looking for? What was your favorite thing about your last company? And what was your least favorite thing? Just to make sure that we hit the favorite thing in there right. in company culture. And we, some companies are kind of the same. Usually I get, for DOD cleared roles, they're like, they don't treat their contractors very well. So I have specific companies I know treat their contractors amazing. Yeah. And they're my favorite clients to work with. But I'm like, okay, if that's their feedback for their least favorite, I'm not sending them to these
right.
certain people.
Right. No, dude, that's insane. So you develop kind of relationships, whatever, LinkedIn, phone, however you do it. What would be it's almost like recidivism rate, but that's not the right word. That's prison. What's the rate of where you send somebody, they do a 12-month contract, they come back to you and say, Jaidin, I'm ready for the next one.
I love it. Well, usually I'm proactive, so I kind of go out to them first.
Right.
And I'll say, hey, your contract's ending in a month. This is what I have for you. And I look for new roles to put them into to kind of keep them. And that way you build up your book of business, not losing the people you have, and then always adding more people. So
it's almost like it feels almost like an insurance agent in some ways. Like you've got your book, you want to upsell them, you want to keep them there, but you're always out kind of hunting for new prospects as well.
Absolutely.
What percentage of your day is working with people who are already with you?
It depends. So if they're placed and they are working for that company, it's usually just, a check-in maybe once a week, once a month. Right. The longer they work there, the more you kind of just casually check in. Right. Because on the ground.
Kind of handed them off at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. But you want to keep that relationship, make sure they're still doing well. You don't want them to just walk away and without knowing anything. So those weekly, monthly check-ins, saying like, how's it going? Are you still loving it? Keep them there for retention. I would say it's not a very big part of my day, though. Most of it's out finding new people. Yep. Biggest part of my day is either calling new people or talking with people that I am currently trying to place. So I'm trying to define like currently working with. Like, did I already place them?
No,
or am I
totally makes sense.
Trying to place them?
Yeah. So most of your day sounds like it's drumming up new business or looking for that first kind of placement.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you assume some kind of a loss rate or some kind of a turnover rate. Like you get someone, it doesn't work out after a month. It's not a shock. Like it happens. You said like it happened recently.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's staffing.
Oh, I'm sorry. But it does sound like you hedge against that risk of someone going to a company 2 months, they're out. It's a loss for you. It's a loss for your firm. It's a loss for your relationship with the client. It's a loss for your relationship, with the actual contractor. You hedge against that a little bit by staying connected after you've placed the person. That way, if they quit, in theory, they're not blaming you, and they're willing to work with you for the next one. Is that close?
Absolutely.
Okay. Jeez, wow. Coolest placement you've ever done? Like, what's some of the coolest stuff you've worked on?
Coolest stuff. I placed rocket scientists. What? My whole job is cool. I would say it was pretty surreal. We watched the rocket launches of certain companies I work for, and there was a propulsion thermal issue with one of the rockets, and they had to postpone it. And my account manager calls up the head of the team. He goes, "You need some new people." And I thought that it was so cool. They were like, "Oh, we know exactly where the issue's coming from. We placed those people." And then when the rocket launched, we're like, "Oh my goch, like we built the whole team."
Yeah. Gosh.
I'm sure it's more cool for the people that actually built the rocket, but
right. No. That's so cool. Rock. You feel like you had a piece of the successful launch.
Yeah.
Okay. Right on. So you graduated in HR, and I feel like you had a minor in finance or something like that. Is that close?
Yeah. HR, management, and then finance.
Right. You should finance. Jeez. Okay. So we, in the college of business, we try to train people for, most of the roles they could go into. There's some, entry points, but specifically with regards to staffing, it's much more traditional because we don't know where people are going to go, right? They go into a smaller firm, they're doing everything themselves. So this whole field of PEOs and staffing agencies, I would say 10 years it's blown up. We have a huge percentage of graduates going to it. What would you say, like you didn't expect, or kind of you were trained the traditional route, and you probably saw early on there's some carryover, but this is actually a different business model than I was trained for. What stood out?
I worked internally as an HR generalist in college, as you know,
yeah.
And I got to staff an entire hotel, and that's where I really fell in love with recruiting.
Okay.
But it was more close-knit, relationship-based. And now I still build relationships, but it's more fast-paced, like
right.
Multiple companies. And when I went into staffing, I was really excited for getting to take people out to lunches and convince them to work for,
right.
the job and all these things. And you get to do that still. I mean, not through COVID, unfortunately,
right.
But it's less often, and it's more Wall Street in my office,
like
just constantly on the phones. No one has an office except for the director. We're all next to each other. It's buzzing. In fact, my office even plays Wolf of Wall Street telephone terrorist speech for motivation.
Perfect.
It's pretty fun.
Perfect. All right. So that kind of opens up another can of worms. And that is what has been described as like a fraternity culture of staffing of PEOs, really. This idea that it's a bit cutthroat, that sometimes people can steal your people, and if you can figure out a way to do it within the rules, you can steal their people. And like talk about that a little bit. Is it, you feel like you love these people you work with, but you're trying to beat them to talent?
Absolutely. But it's a healthy competition, and I think that they're really great at setting it up that way. And the biggest competition is probably other firms. Internally, we have a rule. So if you're in the company at all, you have to wait, I think it's 5 business days or like a week before you can reach out to someone else's candidate that they just submitted.
Yeah.
And internally for our office, we wait around 6 months, and we'll pass them off. We'll be nice, right? Like I'd already submitted them. They have that relationship. It's best for the candidate even, and
Yeah,
it'll be more
one person,
successful.
point of contact. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've had actually candidates where you send out like mass emails and they'll call you and you're like, oh, actually, it looks like you're already working with this person. And you're like, oh, well, then why'd you reach out to me? So it's just like a credibility issue. Like we know
Right.
we're doing an issue, that we stay on top of that.
Yeah.
The competition's healthy. I love it. My biggest competitor in the office is my manager. And I love going head to head with him, being like, oh, my guy's going to get it. He's like, no, my guy's going to get it. It's better than your guy. And just seeing, I love it. I love the culture that way.
So what happens, kind of company culture, if you've ever seen this, what happens when somebody breaks the rules or kind of gets a reputation for playing a little dirty?
That's fair. You can do that. Breaking the rules, we have a strict system to go through. So it's anything marked in the system. I did have an instance actually where I was talking to this candidate for 4 months. I had submitted them multiple times, but it was just random check-ins. You know, how you doing? Are you still looking for work? And I never marked it in the system. And I didn't mark it for around 2 weeks. And this girl came in and submitted him over. And I was like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, because I was going to submit him to a different role. And it was within that days. And I was like, I just want to let you know, I know you submitted him. I know I messed up by not putting it in the system, but I've had a relationship with this candidate for 4 months. Like, what can we do?
Yeah.
And what we usually do is we split commission.
Okay.
So now that candidate is owned by her until 7 days. And I could wait the 7 days to submit him.
Right.
In the system.
Right.
Go around it that way. But I don't play dirty like that. So because she now has candidate ownership, you just split commission and agree on that.
Where does your job or how does your job interface with the client? So we've been talking about the actual like contractors, the people you're placing. When you kind of engage with the clients, or do you? I'm assuming your manager or somebody sets up the contracts, and then you're talking to the managers, hiring managers, saying, okay, what is it really that you're looking for? Is that close?
Yeah, it depends on the firm. My last firm, I had direct hiring manager contact, and we'd listen in on the calls of what they're actually looking for, get to ask questions. For my company I work for now, it's ran a little differently, and the account managers that go out and get the business take the calls, and then they make a bunch of notes, and then they give it to us. And I do think that it's a little less productive that way.
Right.
Because the recruiters, they're the ones actually recruiting, where we have questions. A lot of times they don't put in notes. And so they're like, hey, you need a top secret clearance for this. And I'm like, well, it doesn't say that anywhere. How would I know that?
Right.
So then you wasted, maybe 3 candidates you're submitting over to them without clearances. Right. So I do like it. I wish that all recruiting agencies let the recruiters be on the call and maybe not have direct contact, because it can get confusing for hiring managers, but put them at least on the call, let them ask questions, and then maybe you ask the question to them. I don't know.
Yep. No, that makes perfect sense. Okay. Last question. Second to last question. Somebody wants to get out right now. They're graduating, or they've been out a couple of years working in HR, and they want to dive into this kind of staffing crazy world. What do they need to know, A, about the job, but just B, also about kind of the process and the culture of what it's like?
Oh gosh. I would say if you're majoring in human resources, point out your recruiting skills if you have any, and sales skills. Really, it's a sales job, right? Yeah. We convince people to take jobs. We convince companies to work for us. It's all sales. So highlight that. I worked for Hallmark as just a salesperson for 6 years, and they actually were more interested in that.
Oh, so, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It was weird to me. I was like, are you serious? So it's,
but I know technical interviews. Yeah.
I know. But yeah, highlight that. Honestly, I used to take it out of my resume because I had actual real HR experience. Right. And I sent one with it in there, and they're like, oh, we actually love this. So wow. Put that in there. Start off as a sourcer. Usually they move sourcers really quickly. Like within 3 to 6 months, you'll become a recruiter. But don't be discouraged if you want to come out of college and have a recruiting title. It's really hard to do. It's really competitive, and there's a ton of recruiters with a ton of experience. Right. So start off as a sourcer, work that 3 to 6 months, and then become a recruiter. And it actually helps so much because you don't talk to candidates on the phone for a while. You don't have all that pressure to interview, but you source the roles. You learn what companies are looking for. You learn, how to mechanical engineers. Like I didn't know any of those terms.
Yeah.
A software engineer specifically. Oh my gosh, I was
Right.
happy to start it off as a sourcer. But yeah, don't be discouraged because I was like, oh, I want to be a recruiter. I have recruiting experience, but it flew by and I'm so thankful for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, last thing. What would you leave with anybody who's graduating? I'm thinking about the difference between kind of traditionally trained HR person and your role. I'll call it the cutthroat role, but hey, whatever. But with your role, what would you leave with somebody so they know if they want to go into it? You've mentioned it about resumes and stuff, but any graduating student in HR, what would you want them to know?
If you want to go into it, it's really fun. I recommend it. Lots of money, but you get paid for how hard you work, and it is cutthroat. It is competitive. Companies now usually have a better company culture, and if you're in the industry, you kind of know what companies are very cutthroat, micromanaging, and which ones are laid back and have perfected that culture. I won't go into which ones now, but it's really fun. Honestly, it's a work hard, play hard culture. And if you work your butt off during the day, everyone will go out and have drinks at night. If you're a recovering alcoholic, don't go into this industry. Seriously, you think you can keep up because you just graduated college, you can't.
Right.
And that's true. I work for multiple staffing firms. It's true for any of them.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Right. So if you have experience in a sorority or a frat house, you might be qualified, is what you're saying.
I have actually my director and my manager, both frat guys.
Perfect.
I mean, adults with families now, but
right.
Yeah.
Jaidin, you're awesome. You're awesome. Thank you for your time this morning. And we just really appreciate all you had to say.
Thank you, AB. Nice seeing you again.